Welcome to the Michael Yardley podcast, where I love to delve into the world of wealth creation through property investment, but I also enjoy exploring the psychology of success. And today we are venturing into a fascinating area that intersects both of these, wealth creation and the human psyche. Now, we've all heard about self-sabotage, but have you ever wondered why some of the most intelligent, capable individuals, they hit an individual ceiling in their property investments, in their business ventures? Have you wondered why some people, despite their knowledge, despite their skills, only reach a certain level of success? Well, today we're going to dive deep into what I call your wealth thermostat, a concept that suggests our early experiences and beliefs that they've set a sort of psychological temperature for the level of wealth and success you're most comfortable with. And joining me today is Jackson Milan, the wealth mentor. He's got a unique insight into this because he's the wealth mentor for a lot of very successful business people, 7- and 6-figure business people, where he understands why some people get stuck. So whether you're looking to break through your own financial barriers, understand the psychology behind wealth creation, or just curious about why we do what we do with our money, this episode's for you. So let's get on with it.
Welcome to the Michael Yardley podcast, where twice each week you will learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment, and money in around 30 minutes. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect, and pass on your wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. Now, here's your host, Michael Yardley, Australia's authority in wealth creation through property, who has been voted one of Australia's top 50 most influential thought leaders.
Okay, well, let's uncover the mysteries of the wealth thermostat and learn how you can reset it for your own personal success. Jackson, welcome to the show.
Michael, thanks for having me back. I obviously didn't do too bad of a job last time that you've asked me to return.
Well, we separately have a chat personally about ourselves, our own wealth, our own businesses and our clients. And when we were speaking privately last week, you asked me, Michael, do you see property investors or business people sabotaging themselves, not allowing themselves to get to the next level? And we just both stared at each other because we were doing this over Zoom. We looked at each other and nodded our heads in agreement that it's something that we unfortunately see very commonly. And as we unpack that in our discussion, and to help our individual clients, we realised it would be a really great topic for this podcast to help others who can't see why they're just not able to get to the next level. So Jackson, why do you think some property investors are more successful than others? In fact, let's widen the topic. Why are a small group of investors, business people, entrepreneurs so much more successful than the majority of Australians?
Yes, I really boil it down to one thing. And I've spent a lot of time over the last 15 years or so understanding behavioral finance principles. And as a bit of a backstory, this comes from being a financial advisor, developing these great strategies for my clients. And if only they followed each step and they took action and they implemented, that they would be fantastic. They'd be able to achieve all of their goals. But there are always a group of individuals that failed, that stumbled, that didn't take the action even though they knew it was in their best interest. And that led me to going down the rabbit hole of understanding behavioral psychology. And there is one principle that plays out more often than not called loss aversion bias. And it is the fact that as human beings, we feel the emotion of loss twice as significantly as the emotion of gain. And this is because as humans, we are resource guarders, right? And ultimately what this means is that once we get to a position of comfort, we often want to protect that comfort by any means necessary. And we often get into this vicious cycle of going back into discomfort because we have proven that we can get ourselves back to comfort. And there is a saying that I use time and time again, that the situations we learn to survive, our survival ultimately depends upon. So the difference between these two subsets of people is that some people get stuck in that vicious cycle, and others find intrinsic motivation to get out of that comfort zone and to overcome loss aversion bias in order to create an abundance of wealth.
Of course, this is all at a subconscious level. People don't mean to make silly decisions, irrational decisions, wrong decisions. It's easy for us to judge other people. We don't know what's going on in their mind or where their circumstances have been or where they're coming from. Because, boy, you look at certain clients. I mean, it's interesting. In the old days when I used to do seminars, I'd give a lot of information, and there'd be a few hundred people there. And, 5 or 6 people at the front of the room would do something, and 99% didn't. So then I gave full day seminars. I did multi-day seminars, webinars, and it didn't make any difference. It was the same. There was a small group of people who took action and the majority didn't.
And why do you think that is, mate? Like this wealth thermostat that we talk about, why do you think that there are certain people who take action and others who don't, even though they know it's their best interest to do so?
Interesting. Well, maybe let's start off with, because we're talking about wealth and money, and just to reassure people, I think we both know each other well enough to recognise that we know that wealth means much, much more than just money. You need money, but health. Boy, has the last couple of years shown us that it's no use having money if you've got you're in hospital or having problems. I believe you need money plus friends, people who love you, people who are around you. I think true wealth also, Jackson, is the ability to grow, to keep learning, to keep changing. Money plus spirituality, that's important to a lot of people. And I think also true wealth is money plus the ability to give contribution. But I think to answer your question, you're asking why. It's actually not just getting the money. It's not just about attaining wealth. Once you've got it, Jackson, you've got to maintain it. And in order to maintain it, I think a lot of people have to upgrade the way they think about money. That's what you were hinting at already. I believe we've all got this internal financial blueprint. I'm sure we've seen examples. We've all seen examples of people who have obtained wealth, happiness, success, and then they just sabotage their personal lives, don't they? Or their family lives or their business, and they lose it all. It's the same with people who win the lottery, isn't it, Jackson? They suddenly get more wealth. They've got more wealth than they know how to handle it, and they lose it. And you asked a question, so I'm giving you a very long-winded answer. I think the analogy is to think a bit about yourself like a cup. If your cup is small, the amount of money is big, then it spills over and you're going to lose it. You simply can't have more money than the size of your cup. So you've got to grow yourself into a bigger cup. So you not only attain more wealth, but you attract it and you keep it. And I call maybe the size of your cup your wealth operating system, the way you think, the way you react about money. And the universe hates a vacuum. So if you've got a bigger cup, it's going to give you more money. It's going to come into there. So the trouble is most people haven't got a big cup. They don't think well. So they've got to upgrade the way of thinking, become a different person that attracts money rather than the negative thoughts that we have that we picked up as a child that still affect us today. And it's all happening at a subconscious level.
Exactly, I agree. And the issue I feel is that most people don't even understand this is happening. It is complete unconscious incompetence as they go on their journey. And it's interesting, I developed a model as my last book that I just published in December is called The Family Vault. It's all about how to create generational wealth and to keep it. And the issue that typically happens when people are transferring money from generation to generation is that handing over money without handing over the operating system, the skills, the experience, is a disaster. It's a death sentence. And it's the reason why that wealth gets squandered. And as part of that process, I developed what we call the wealth pyramid, which has been a framework that I've been working on and refining for the better part of the last decade. There's basically 5 stages that we go through on our wealth journey. So at the first stage, we've got financial battle, which is basically we're burning more money than we're making, right? We're drowning financially. And that stage is supported by 2 mental states. So the first mental state is that you are a spectator. I used to call this a victim. I think it's probably a little bit taboo these days, but a spectator is somebody who doesn't
That's interesting because I've got a similar model and down the bottom is victim, so maybe it's inappropriate today. So thank you. Please keep going.
I think it gets people's back up, right? I think the idea there is that people have not taken responsibility. They're not in their driver's seat. They're a passenger of their existence. And they can't be helped until they get into the passenger seat. And the next state is a battler, right? That they know how to get themselves out of the crap, right? But they wear that as a badge of honor, that it's this constant Aussie battler style thing that they get themselves out of trouble and then back into trouble again. But then we transition to stage 2, which is financial comfort. And the first stage of financial comfort is that we're making ends meet. We live a good lifestyle, but there's no surplus. And we're a hustler and we're trading time for money. But that's not going to get us to financial freedom, right? So if we want to start elevating ourselves, we need to become a manager. We need to become a manager of our lives, a manager of our business, a manager of our career, of the resources that we have. And that allows us to elevate into financial growth. And financial growth means we have surplus. We've got business profit, we've got personal surplus, and we're allocating that to wealth creation. We're saving, we're building wealth, we're buying property, we're paying down debt. And that's where we start becoming an achiever. And this is the first real sign of somebody who sits at that front of the room. That's that 5 people that you spoke about at your seminar, Michael. They are achievers, that nothing will get in their way. But that will only take them so far. You then need to become a captain. And a captain actually organizes achievers. They're typically surrounded by achievers, and they lead from the front of the pack. And that's what gets us to financial freedom. And then to be in financial freedom, we need to be a steward. And it comes to that point, the difference between making the money and keeping it. It's a fundamentally different skill set. And you need to become a financial steward for that wealth, where you treat it as if it's not even yours anymore. You're just a caretaker. And then if we really want to go towards financial abundance, we must become a manifester or a manufacturer of wealth. That essentially we need to make something from nothing. We're basically a creator of wealth. And then we get to financial abundance, where we become a champion. Life is no longer about us. It's about community. It's about people who we are heroes to. And then finally, we become a legend. And we don't decide if we're a legend. Others decide that we are a legend once we are no longer of this earth. And it's that transition from self to team to community to world that is the path to really mastering this money mindset.
Well, I think it's important to understand these models. The benefit of the model is it shows you where you are along the way in the journey and the things you have to do differently, the people you have to work with. Jackson, I found it's really, really hard to do on your own. I know when I first started investing, learning about these things, I wanted to do it all on my own. I guess 2 reasons. One, I thought that's the only way and I wanted to do it. And I think the other was I was cheap. I wasn't prepared to pay mentors, pay coaches, etc. But there's only so much you can do, so far you can go on your own through trial and error. I think it's important to get mentors, and that's one of the things I learned early in the piece. But you've got to be careful who you use as a mentor. There's in social media now, Jackson, it's so easy to look like you've achieved things. You've got to actually get people who've achieved what you want and have kept it for a period of time as well. It's a huge leap of faith to assume that starting at the bottom of the investment or the business ladder or the personal development ladder, only with your own knowledge and experience that you can ever get to the place where the models are. I mean, I learned many, many years ago from Tony Robbins, the concept of modeling other people. We've all got to learn from people's mistakes, but why do it from yourself? Why not get it from other people who've already made them and achieved what you want to achieve?
Of course. And mate, in terms of your journey, who've been the most influential people or the people, how you've got your programming and who you've modeled after over the years? Well,
interestingly, in the early part of my career, there wasn't that available. Remember, I've been investing since the 1970s. There were a couple of books around, most of them from America, not much from Australia. There wasn't the internet. And then there were tapes, and eventually I listened to tapes in my car, and Jim Rohn was one of the very early people that I learned ideas about personal development from, and Brian Tracy to a degree, and then there were CDs and eventually videos, and if these people came from overseas, I'd learn from them. I went to Tony Robbins' course many, many years ago when he came out, and I remembered the story that he made people walk on hot coals for a fire walk. And I thought, I'm not stupid. I'm not going to do that. I'll let other people do that. But he got us all excited and did it on the first night, where the concept was, if you look at the green grass ahead rather than the hot coals under your feet, if you can do that, you can walk through anything. And so I've done a number of his courses. In those days, there was also Chris Howard, who had a lot of influence on me. So I did a lot of personal development, and that changed the way I thought about myself, increased my self-confidence. And then I kept reading everything I could about that. And I'm still learning today. And yes, like you, I've learned a lot about the behavioral finance. Morgan Housel is one of my favourite authors, and I often quote him in my blogs and on my podcast because he thinks very differently to most people about the way we think about money. I'm still learning every day, Jackson.
Yes. And it's interesting. It's funny. I talk to my mum all of the time, and she was a business owner when I was a kid. And she always says to me, Jackson, I wish I had access to the level of education and mentorship that you do today. But I think it's gone from one end of the spectrum to the other, right? There's a lot of knowledge and there's a lot of information and a lot of gurus out there. How do you discern the difference of who to listen to? Because it can be pretty confusing.
Well, that's really interesting because despite all the knowledge, despite all the information, over the years in my area in property investment, the statistics remain the same, that 50% of people who buy an investment property sell up in the first 5 years. More recently, it's been shown they don't even last 3 years. Of those who stay in the game, less than 1% own 6 or more properties. So despite the knowledge, despite the information, or probably because of it, things haven't changed. So and it really has to do in many ways with what we've been talking about up to now, that unless the people change their way of thinking, change the way of doing things, even if they do buy a number of investment properties, they're going to lose their money. They're not going to do it right. So the extra information is in some ways a challenge. So how do you decide who's the person you should listen to? I was only having a chat with somebody in my team about this an hour ago, where there's a whole range of new gurus out this year looking for the next way of attracting inexperienced, naive people in the property market. They're talking about a new sort of property where you build a property with 5 little subunits in it and get lots of cash flow. A couple of years ago was micro houses. Then it was buying off the plan. There was mining towns and hotspots in regional Australia, commercial property a year or two ago. People are trying to sell the secret to quick riches. And in my words, it's a bit like selling tickets to see a unicorn. There isn't anything like this. So if it sounds too good to be true, be careful who you listen to. I've got behind me here a whole lot of Australian property investor magazines when they printed the old magazines and your investment property magazines. And every now and then with some friends, we play a game. Where are they now? You see the people with their standing in front of their red Ferraris or telling you about how well they're doing. They're not around anymore. There's actually very few people who've stood the test of time. So yes, it's a big challenge.
It really is. And I think this is the hard part about wealth. And I think this leads into this scarcity versus abundance mindset, that the people who are the most vulnerable are the ones who often fall for these fly-by-night charlatans, right? Because they are selling them this dream that they want to be true. They need to be true in many cases, and they succumb to these sales pitches. And you and I both know that the tried and true wealth creation principles, the ones that have worked timelessly throughout all different market cycles, are boring. And it's interesting that for people like us, because we stick to the fundamentals, we say the same thing, the strategy doesn't change. I don't know if you get this, Michael, but I get this all of the time. Like, Jackson, where's the sexy stuff? Like, where's the fun stuff? And I go, it doesn't exist. Just don't bother.
Yeah. I often say our systems, our frameworks are too simple for intelligent people. They're looking for something more than that. And if you want property investment to be exciting, wrong. Go bungee jumping, go trail bike riding. Your investments should be boring so that the rest of your life's exciting. So I think that's a really good point, that some people are doing this because they love going to open for inspections. They love looking at real estate. They love negotiating. You've got to take the emotion out of it. And that's why it's often useful to have somebody in the middle, a buyer's agent, and shameless plug, our team at Metropole are experienced in doing that. So yes, you've got to take the emotion out of this and invest based on evidence, on facts, and on things that have always worked over the long term rather than what's just working now. Because you shouldn't be making 30-year investment decisions on the last 20, 30 minutes of news or even the last 30 days of what's happening.
No, and look, I've got a story for you, Michael, which hopefully can be value to the listeners. When I was about 19 years old, I was looking to buy my first investment property, and I went to a home show in the city, and there was this stall, and they gave away this DVD with this very sharp and cool and collected individual who had this amazing presentation about this particular strategy, which was a property development strategy. And they were selling a program, inviting to a seminar. And I went to the seminar. The room was absolutely packed. And she basically verbatim said the exact same pitch that was on the DVD. It was just so well put together. And I smelt something was a little bit awry. And funnily enough, the investment into this program, which was basically taking options and trying to play middleman wholesaling, finding property developments and selling them on to property developers, to everyday people. The investment in this particular program was about the equivalent to the property deposit that I had saved. Now, she did her pitch and called people to the back of the room for an instant saving, and my better judgment said, look, sleep on it. And I sent her an email, and I said, hey, look, I went to your presentation. It sounds amazing, but this is my property deposit. If you were me, would you invest in a single property, or would you invest in your program? And I was waiting for a reply. Thank God that I never got a reply, and I never went ahead with it. And I fast forward many years, and this woman was unfortunately charged, suspended as a director, another fly-by-night operation. But to think how close I came as a naive 19-year-old on the cusp of buying my first property, and thinking of all of the people that ran to the back of the room, thinking that it was the silver bullet that was going to get them to financial freedom, and how many people have potentially subsequently been burned, just goes to show how important your money mindset is, and how important objective mentorship and advice is in the world of wealth creation.
Well, in the area of property, there's no qualifications you need. There's, in fact, no regulation with regard to financial services, financial planning. And I know you've got a division that does that in an accounting business, and we've got a financial planning business as well. I'm not a financial planner. You actually need to be licensed, and your advice has to be checked and your advice is audited. But anyone can go on TikTok, Instagram, in the old days, fill a room. And I guess that's going to start again moving forward as well. Nowadays, it's webinars and masterclasses instead. It sounds good. It sounds exciting. And I'm not sure that all these people are actually nasty people. I think many of them genuinely believe that they've got the idea, they've got a secret, I've got a good new idea. The trouble is time tests their secrets, and you shouldn't be giving the keys to your Porsche to a P-plater. Let them learn on somebody else's money.
I agree, mate. And I think the thing that they often overlook, and I think this is part of the psychology of money that people need to understand, is the standard deviation or the relationship between risk versus return of these strategies. Like, sure, there's plenty of strategies out there where you could make a tremendous amount of money. However, there is usually a proportionate amount of risk associated with that strategy. And we've got to understand the failure rates and the likelihood of success. And in my philosophy, Michael, and how I work with my clients is that instead of what most people tend to go towards is how could I take the most amount of risk to get to my destination the fastest, I approach it from the complete opposite to say, what is the least amount of risk you need to take to achieve your goals? And it's a very contrary kind of hold your horses approach, but it's prudent and it's pragmatic. And that's how wealth creation should be.
The problem is most of us haven't been taught about money. We haven't been taught about wealth creation. And what we have been taught comes from people who haven't really created much wealth or success. I mean, our mentors in early years were our parents. And I remember in the old days when I ran seminars, I said, hands up if you had multimillionaire parents. And if my kids weren't in the room, there probably wasn't many people who'd put their hands up. And I'd say, but imagine the conversation around the kitchen table of these people. They would be talking very, very different things to what the average person does, and they count on the lottery or things like that. So most of us have been taught about money and wealth from people who didn't create much. And it's much the same with many of these so-called experts. They're probably people who really haven't had substantial wealth either. And people most of us associate with, work colleagues, friends, peers, they all have opinions on money, but they're not necessarily right. So I think another factor that's important is having the right peer group, having the right group of people around you. Is your peer group going to get you to the next level, Or are they going to say, no, don't try that. Oh, that's risky. No, I know somebody who bought an property investment and it went bung. Well, no, don't open a business. You're only going to go broke. It's important who you hang around. I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Warren Buffett who said you end up being like the 5 people you hang around the most.
I agree. And it's interesting, once again, this ties into this money mindset piece, is that as human beings, we have so much stimuli that comes in every single second, millions of pieces. And we have these subconscious lenses that are reinforced by our values and our beliefs and our experiences. And there is this cognitive bias, this confirmation bias, that we look for proof in the world that reinforces the things that we believe. So it's like the old saying Confucius said, he who said he can and he who said he can't are both right. And it's interesting, a great example, which I'm sure a lot of the listeners resonate with. When you make a decision to buy a car, let's say you're going to buy a Lexus, you see that Lexus everywhere. Was the Lexus did it miraculously appear because you decided that that's what you wanted, or was it there all along? And this is the point of that confirmation bias, that when you surround yourself with negative people who have this scarcity mindset, they're like, be careful, watch out, then you're going to see fear and threats everywhere. When you surround yourself with abundant, pragmatic, successful people who are achievers and that do things in the world, then you're going to see more opportunities. You're going to be more pragmatic. And that's really what you need to strive for as a wealth accumulator, to ensure that you not only make it, but you keep it.
Well, interestingly, once a year we run Wealth Retreat on the Gold Coast, happening again at the end of April. And it's successful people there wanting to surround themselves with other successful people. As I speak to people who are coming, one of the big challenges a lot of successful business people, entrepreneurs, investors have is isolation. They actually don't have the easy ability to get together with others. And that's why I know you, in your team, you mentor business people. Part of getting together is having a mastermind of successful people that you can talk to, you can share your experiences, the positive and the negative, the losses as well. And the same with the sort of things that we do. So I think we're talking about a lot of people getting stuck. The first thing is to realize that you are. To understand that we're all driving around with one foot on the accelerator and one on the brake. We have some positive beliefs, some habits that help us get in the right direction, but we also have some negative thoughts, some negative beliefs. And the idea is to understand those, delete them, and replace them with more positive thoughts. That's not as easy to do. And that's, again, where you need mentors to help you. It's just too hard to do it on your own.
And it's interesting, right? Because we are subjective creatures, and wealth should be objective. We should be trying our best to keep emotion out of it. And there is a formula to this, from my perspective. The first thing is the quality of your mindset, which we've been talking about a lot today. And that's really measured by the quality of your ideas and essentially expanding that cup, right? Because as you've rightly said, it's going to overflow depending on the size of your cup. If you want to put more in it, the cup's got to get bigger. And hopefully, as part of this show, and I'm sure for the regular listeners of this podcast, there's new ideas that you get each and every single episode that you wouldn't have had if you didn't make the time. So we've got to constantly expand the mindset. However, a good idea in theory remains exactly that, just a good idea until you take action. So we need to multiply the quality of your ideas by the quality of your actions. And because we need to take action, we need to calibrate. And it's interesting, I've been doing a lot of research into the reasoning behind procrastination. Our mind does not like to context switch. It is why we are so good at procrastinating. We like to keep doing what we're already doing. So if we want to go to the gym, or we're going to buy a property, or we're going to do something, it's context switching. So our brain wants to keep us in what it's already doing. So we need to create a methodology to overcome that. And we do so through actually reasoning with ourselves. It's like an internal negotiation. How do we reduce the action threshold that we go, it's only a little bit of effort. We're only going to do that for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back. And like, okay, we calm ourselves to allow ourselves the space to take action. And that's a muscle that we need to train. And then the third component is the power of reflection. And it is brutally honest reflection of, can you stand and look at yourself in the mirror and honestly evaluate the quality of your mindset and your actions, and acknowledge what you've done well and what you haven't done well, and then calibrate and optimize over time. And we call this the feedback loop. This has been done for hundreds of years, even dating back to the Jesuit priests, that they visualize their perspective and their actions as two overlapping circles. And they want those circles to be overlapping over time. So they're calibrating what they perceive and what they do as closely as they possibly can. And that's the power of anything, but particularly when it comes to mastering your money.
I think the problem is most people think the way of mastering money, getting wealth, whether it's in property, shares, business, is more knowledge. They actually think if I learn more, if I got the next trick, or if I've got a way around things, or maybe I sell a different product or service. That's not right though, is it? Knowledge alone doesn't guarantee success.
Knowledge alone doesn't. And I think people spend too much time and effort into the heuristics of the modalities of learning, as opposed to transferring into what we call tacit knowledge and experience, the knowledge you gain by doing. And there becomes this threshold. The more knowledge you have, the higher the stakes are, because you're like, I know all of this stuff. I'm so fearful of failure because I got no runs on the board. And it's actually better that you try and act as your knowledge is increasing, and obviously do so in a controlled environment, controlling the risk. But you learn through doing and calibrating. Like, I'll give you an example here, Michael. At the moment, I'm learning guitar. I'm learning flamenco and Spanish guitar. And I think about it like, I can only learn that by doing. I can read all of the books and I can study all of the notation that I want. But until I actually get the movements and start building the muscle memory, that time invested in the theory is wasted. They must be matched. Otherwise, it's really one side of the equation that is going to become even more asymmetric over time. And that's not the game we want to play.
Sure. I think another thing that sometimes comes into play is fear. In other words, people seem to do things on the subconscious level like we've spoken up to now, but there's also some people I've come across, they fear surpassing a certain level of wealth. Sometimes it's what others will think. There's also the imposter syndrome about I'm just not good enough. How do you see that playing out amongst people?
It's really interesting, mate. And this is something that I've done a lot of work on because we see this in our clients and I see this in myself. And I use a process that's called the 4 C's, okay? And I evaluate myself on a scale of 1 to 10 for each of these 4 C's. So the first one is confidence. How confident am I in this particular area of my life or my business? Second is capability. Really objectively, how capable am I? Third one is commitment. How committed am I? And the fourth one is courage. How courageous am I to take action even in the face of uncertainty? And if we evaluate each of those 4 things on the scale of 1 to 10, it'll usually identify where the issue is. And what typically comes down to is confidence is typically a measure of your capability, or at least your perspective of capability. Commitment comes down to finding a why, because if you don't have a why that intrinsically motivates you, you're never going to find the how. And the courage is often the last one that holds so many people back, because failure is inevitable. But courage can't be faked. Courage is a byproduct of knowing that you could fail, of understanding the stakes and the risks, but taking action anyway. And Morgan Housel talks a lot about this in his book, which was a big game changer for me. People don't acknowledge the element of luck in wealth because it will always play a factor. You could do everything right, everything by the book, and still get hit by a black swan event that you could not have foreseen. So you always need to acknowledge that and take action anyway.
Yeah, so that's in his book, Psychology of Money, and he's got a new book that's just come out that I've listened to his podcast about, but I haven't had a chance to read yet. This is really a very interesting conversation, and I hope our listeners are appreciating it as well, because we can talk more about knowledge and the hotspots and the tax consequences and finance, but as we've said a couple of times, that's not going to get you to the next level. So if you got some benefit from this as you're listening to this and you want to understand how you can get to the next level, more than happy for you to have a chat with our team at Metropole, where we actually give independent, unbiased advice to help our clients. We see our clients' blind spots, but people know a lot about what I do, Jackson. What do you and your team do?
Yes. So we are wealth and profit coaches for 6 and 7 figure business owners. So most of our clients know how to make money. They don't know how to keep it. So this conversation is very timely and resonates with a lot of the people that come to us. And fundamentally, we help them with 4 key things. 1, we help them understand how do they maximize their profit and their cash flow in their business so they can have more money to build wealth with and they can create an asset that could be sold. Second thing, we help them build a personal wealth plan that's in the form of a 20-year roadmap. And we show them how they can maximize their wealth across all different asset classes. And we work very closely with buyers agents like yourselves to ensure that we implement property as part of that holistic strategy. The third part is we're big believers in property, and one of the biggest limiting factors to building a big property portfolio is finance. We help our clients get the money that they need in order to build their property portfolio. And lastly, we help them with tax and accounting, so we can make sure that they're not paying any bonuses to the ATO, and they can protect their hard-earned against unforeseen risks that they could potentially avoid.
Well, I'll leave a link in the show notes so people can get information about you. And if nothing else, they should get your regular musings with your newsletter so that they know what's going on as well. Jackson, we've really only skimmed the surface of this. So let's get together again in a little while and go into it a bit further. Thank you so much for your time, Jackson.
My absolute pleasure. And I'll give you guys a link to complete our scorecard so you can do a little bit of an evaluation. So if you jump to wealthhealthcheck.com.au, that's wealthhealthcheck.com.au, complete our 40-point scorecard, the whole heap of resources there that you can get access to, including my books. And that will help you guys get clear on what your next best moves are and implement some of the stuff we've talked about today.
And of course, a lot of people are probably walking, driving in the gym, so I'll leave that link in the show notes as well. I hope you learned something in my chat with Jackson Milan, and if you do, but you don't currently subscribe or follow this show, just for a sec, stop on whichever podcast app you're listening to and follow the show so that twice a week you get the information from my guests and myself. We were talking about the wealth thermostat, which is something that was set as a child by things you heard, things you experienced, things you saw that have made you feel the way you do about money. So what can you do to change your level of comfort, your wealth thermostat? Because remember, this is all happening at a subconscious level. And as I started to explain, it involves, first of all, recognizing the limiting beliefs you've got, getting rid of them and replacing them with empowering beliefs. But it's not as simple as that, is it? I mean, if you think about it, every choice you've made has resulted in exactly where you are right now. And it's no different today. The choice you're going to make at the end of my quick discussion with you now is going to create a specific outcome in your life. It's the choice of whether you're going to join us at Wealth Retreat 2024 or not. You've heard me speak about it before. At the end of April on the Gold Coast, we're going to meet in a room of close to 100 already movers and shakers, successful people. But don't count yourself out. But the thought is we work not just on the latest tax and property and finance and business strategies, but also we do spend time upgrading your wealth operating system. So you come in with a whole lot of great ideas, but you go out with some strict plans. You know what you're going to do. Now, it's not a rah-rah session. It's not woo-woo. We don't jump on tables and dance on tables and massage each other's shoulders. But it is a way of upgrading your operating system, your wealth operating system. So at the moment, I guess you've got 2 choices, road A or road B. Road A represents a road travelled by many, many successful investors, business people and entrepreneurs for the last 17 years. That's how long we've been running Wealth Retreat. That road's for somebody who is ready to take control of their financial destiny, for somebody who's looking for more clarity and direction in today's confusing economic, business market, property market, for somebody who wants to succeed financially. And Road B represents the same path you're on now. This decision will keep you on the path until, of course, the next choice presents itself. That won't be for Wealth Retreat for another 12 months. So the choice is yours, Road A or Road B. By the way, there's no right or wrong answer. Just ask yourself what's right for you. So if you want to take Road A, go to wealthretreat.com.au, learn all about this special event, the great faculty I've put together, and express your interest in joining us. And I'll chat with you to make sure investing 5 days at Wealth Retreat is right for you. I'm really not exaggerating when I say this training has changed the financial lives of many others who've attended over the last 15 years, 16 years we've been running it. I hope you choose to be one of them. wealthretreat.com.au.
Now here's Michael's mindset message. Remember, a change in your thinking will lead to a change in your life.
My mindset message today is that you're going to have to walk through hot sands in order to find the ideal spot on your beach. Now, if you're a beach person, you're going to understand what I mean. On many beaches, in order to get that nice, comfortable spot, you're going to have to trudge through a seamless, endless amount of scorching hot sand. You're going to be carrying an umbrella, some chairs, an esky, many other things as well, and dragging the kids behind you. And if you don't properly prepare yourself for the pain by wearing thongs, sneakers or shoes, the journey through the hot sand towards the cool ocean will be almost unbearable. Now, I remember many years ago, Pam and I were doing a tour of Israel and we were going to go to the Dead Sea. You know, that's where the water is so salty that you can't sink, you just float. It keeps you afloat the whole time. So we went on a bus tour there and we got onto what we thought was a beach. It was going to be a beach, but it wasn't. Rocks, pebbles, it was an uncomfortable walk. And boy, was it quite some distance to the ocean. And as I was walking along, my feet were in pain. And I couldn't be bothered, didn't want to go further. And Pam said, no, you've got to come all this way. You can't not go there. She encouraged me. And it was worth it. It was an amazing experience. I guess what I'm telling you is your success journey is going to be a lot like that journey towards the ocean. You're going to have to endure pain, the pain of your own success journey in order to realize success. I don't know what that pain is going to be, but it will be obstacles, pitfalls, mistakes, failures, rejection, indifference by people that were important to you. It's going to be a roller coaster of emotions that make the journey, at times, almost unbearable. Most, unfortunately, never make it to their spot on the beach. They underestimate the pain of the journey, and as a result, the scorching hot sand is simply too hot for them to handle, or those rocky, pebbly beaches are just too painful under their feet. So they quit. And you know what? Often it's just before they succeed. But the few who do succeed are able to do so when the pain that does come to them, they can endure it because they're prepared for it. The key to realizing success is not tolerating the pain of the journey towards success, but preparing for it. You've got to expect obstacles to be in your way. You better be prepared for the pitfalls. You've got to expect that there's going to be mistakes, there's going to be failures. And above all, you've got to understand that the journey is going to be long and painful. So when those who succeed encounter the hot sands along the path, they're ready for it. They bring their sneakers or their thongs, or if you're in New Zealand, their flip-flops with them. Being prepared for the pain enables you to focus on one thing and one thing only: getting to the ocean, getting to your spot on the beach. Well, thanks for spending the last little while with me, and I hope you got some benefit from this show. If you did, and you know somebody else who'd also benefit, please tell them about the Michael Yardney podcast. There's a share button on every podcast app. On Apple Podcasts, there's 3 little buttons down the bottom. Press it and share it, or just tell them about the Michael Yardney podcast. I hope you're going to be doing them a favour, and you'll definitely be doing me a favour and helping me in my quest to make as many people as possible financially literate. Now, there's ways of catching up with me between these shows. Just look for Michael Yardney on social media, or why not join my private Facebook group? Go to Facebook and look for the Property Update Facebook group. And I have a way of saying thank you to you for subscribing to this podcast. Go to podcastbonus.com.au. There'll be a link in the show notes, podcastbonus.com.au, where you can get a bunch of ebooks and reports. My way of saying thank you. And when you've got time, why not listen to some of the old podcasts? There's individual lessons in each of those that I think would be helpful for you. I'll be back again real soon. In the meantime, have a great week. Make it a great week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect, and pass on their wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. If you like what you heard and don't already subscribe, you'll find us on iTunes or on your favourite Android app as the Michael Yardney Podcast. Watch out for our next show, which comes to you twice a week, and you'll learn some new ideas about property investment, success, and money in around 30 minutes. To get more of Michael's thoughts, go across to www.propertyupdate.com.au and sign up for his daily morning briefing, and you'll hear from not only Michael but a group of leading property success and money experts. And just a reminder that the information you heard in this show today is general educational advice and not specific investment advice, as we don't know your personal circumstances. If you're looking for specific advice, why not ask the team at Metropole to help you?